They said the marble floor had never felt colder. Catherine doesn't faint. She folds quietly, as if the weight of centuries has slipped onto her shoulders all at once. White roses at her wrist from a rehearsal bouquet. A leather folio open on the table. One line of ink rearranges the universe. His Royal Highness Prince George of Wales, heir apparent. Not in a distant someday. In ink, in protocol. In a room where even the air feels curated. She doesn't hit the floor because he is there first, on his knees in a black suit that no longer feels like armor. He gathers her, not as a prince, not as a future king, but as a husband trying to stop an avalanche with his bare hands. If you fall, he says, I fall. The room exhales. Before the marble, before the vow, there was light, Norfolk light, sifting through Anmer Hall like fine flour. Pancake mornings, sticky fingers, a football thumping against the wall, and the kind of laughter that softens every hard edge. William's sleeves are rolled. Catherine sorts roses because calm sometimes looks like arranging stems that refuse to listen. The phone rings with the casual arrogance of a sound that always expects to be answered. Oh, he says very little. He puts the phone down even slower. She knows already by the way his shoulders rise and don't come back down. Clarence House. Tonight. Both of you. They drive the length of an afternoon and say almost nothing. Not because there is nothing to say, but because some sentences only exist in silence first. The king is smaller than memory and larger than the room. Serious. Treatable. Words that are supposed to soothe and never do. A plan unfurls. Appointments, envelopes, statements that will have to sound brave by morning. Then comes the sentence that moves the future, not in thunder, not in fanfare, but in a father's eyes that say, be ready now. They leave heavier than they arrived. London is too loud for what they carry. In the hush of a side street, the car becomes a sanctuary where the only prayer is air. He folds forward, shoulders shaking, not a prince, and says the truest thing, I'm not ready. No one ever was. Being brave sometimes starts with pancakes. They build a sundae big enough to hold the storm. Chocolate chips for the youngest. A careful smile for the middle. A watchful quiet for the eldest who is already doing math that has nothing to do with school. Grandpa is ill, Catherine says, and the room shrinks to the size of 3 faces that deserve easier sentences. He's going to fight. We're going to hope. One question lands like glass on tile. Are you going to be king now? Not now, not today. But the road has turned, and everyone at the table can feel the car leaning into a new direction. Childhood shifts in the air like weather. They make a circle of arms on a Sunday morning and decide to be a family out loud. It is not a solution, but it is a start. A week later, duty calls like a voice with perfect posture. A hospital opening, hands to shake, stories to hold, tiny courage in tiny beds. They are choreography in motion. He with steady questions, she with the warm gravity that makes strangers exhale. The world watches, tallying seconds and sentences as if humanity can be graphed. Mid-speech, 3 seconds vanish. He pauses, not because he's forgotten the line, but because the line has forgotten how to carry him. He finds his way back by following her gaze across the room. The next morning, pixels decree him unready, as if readiness is a switch you flip in a body still learning how to grieve in public. Catherine reads so he doesn't have to. Rage sits neat and hot at the base of her throat. He crouches beside her chair like a man who will weather headlines by hand, if that's what it takes. They've been told their job is to be seamless. They're learning instead to be seen. Rehearsal day. The kind of room where history stares from the walls and expects you not to blink. A portfolio opens and there it is, ink, precise as a blade. George's name in a sentence that can't possibly understand the boy it intends to crown. Her vision narrows to a keyhole. Not the theatrical collapse of fiction, but the slow descent of a mother doing math she cannot live with. Knees unfasten. The room reaches. William arrives first. Protocol says manage, contain, present. William does none of it. He sits on the floor, in front of everyone who keeps score. He anchors her with his whole body and speaks where only she can hear. We bend the crown or we break tradition. We don't break our son. 5 minutes on marble becomes 5 centuries in headlines. But in that unallowed space, something new is born. Not rebellion for its own sake, but refusal as an act of love. They ask for a smaller room and tell the truth inside it. The king listens, the father listening inside the crown. He remembers being prepared to perfection and loved imperfectly, and how one is not a substitute for the other. A decision is not a law, but it is a line drawn on the inside of a family. George will be a boy first. The institution can keep its documents. The parents will keep their child. In a shed that smells like last summer, a chain refuses the sprocket and sends him spiraling 15 years backward. Grief knows every shortcut. Panic arrives like weather you don't see on the forecast. Catherine doesn't fix him. She sits beside him on the concrete and holds the silence until it becomes safe. Courage doesn't always look like standing up first. Sometimes it's staying down together. He says the sentence every father fears. How do I keep him small long enough to grow strong? And because there is no answer, they make a promise instead. We will lose slowly. We will give inch by inch. We will never let the crown devour him whole. They speak about mental health with the composure of people who have just practiced it at home. He says struggle is not failure. She says honesty is a kind of leadership. Neither uses the word collapse, and no one needs them to. Something shifts. Not in the tabloids, but in the people who hear themselves inside the speech and feel a door open. Highgrove wears the season like a well-cut suit. Father and son walk the long green of a life spent waiting and finally doing. The king admits he tried to build a perfect heir and missed the messier job of building a whole man. His confession lands like permission. William doesn't need a father who knows everything. He needs one who knows this. They agree, without signing anything, to choose breath over pageantry wherever they can. It is not abdication, it is allocation. Of time, of tenderness, of a boy's remaining ordinary days. Catherine goes to work, the part that exists outside titles. Early childhood, mental health, the quiet engines that change a country in ways no ceremony can. The collapse didn't break her. It redrew her map. The center is not a throne room. It's a table where children eat breakfast and a stack of proposals that might make someone else's breakfast quieter. When he appears at her door and says he's still learning how to carry weight without becoming it, she smiles like someone who knows the curriculum by heart. They are not invincible. They are practicing. George draws 5 stick figures with more truth than most press statements. A crown floats above his father, yes, but he draws daisies around his mother and a football by his own shoe. He is telling them what matters. They listen. Childhood doesn't disappear. It changes address. It hides inside pop quizzes and muddy knees, inside Lego cities and bedtime chapters that go long. It survives, if you guard the doors. Movie night is not small. It's infrastructure. It's the scaffolding that keeps a roof over a season of storm. They say it out loud. More home than headlines, more honesty than optics, more love than legacy. Not because legacy is nothing, but because love is the only legacy that can hold everything else. The doorbell rings, not ominous, just human. William's hand squeezes Catherine's shoulder as he goes. She gathers 2 small bodies in a blanket and watches the hallway fill with a shadow that looks like history and a chance. It's his brother, the one with whom every sentence is complicated and worth it. No speeches, no choreography, just a doorway and the family they still are, even when they forgot for a while. He steps aside. The children look up. The room inhales, and for once, the future waits politely in the corridor while the present chooses itself. Years from now, the marble will still be cold. People will still whisper their versions of that day. Some will talk about protocol, others about posture, others about the staggering audacity of sitting down on a floor built for standing ovations. But the marble remembers the vow. The moment a man with a crown somewhere in his future put his whole life on the ground to hold the person who mattered more than the pages. The moment a mother decided ink could not outrank a boy's breath. Be ready now, the world had demanded. And so they were, just not in the way it expected. Not as monuments, but as people. Not as unbreakable, but as unbroken. If you fall, I fall. And if we fall, we rise together.